The top United Nations official for Somalia has welcomed the country's recent adoption of a federal budget as a major milestone in its economic development. Now, this move brings the troubled nation one step closer to getting access to funds from international financial institutions. The IMF says Somalia owes just over $5 billion to international creditors. Its parliament approved the 2018 budget last week, and the $274 million package is a significant step towards meeting the reform requirements laid out in the current staff-monitored program for the Horn of Africa country. The SMP is designed to foster economic reconstruction and enable countries to establish a track record of policy and reform implementation. Somalia, remember, has already completed its first SMP that was running between 2016 and earlier this year. So let's expand this conversation. Abdulaziz Billo joins us now live from the seaside capital of Mogadishu with more data. So, Abdulaziz, at the end of the day, what's Somalia's case for an aggressive debt write-off program? Because it does owe quite a bit of cash, but what's the plan for getting that debt written off next year?
Well, Rama, getting rid of that debt will be the government's area of focus come 2018. That's the response that we're getting here from officials from the Ministry of Finance. But as you've said, the United Nations, as well as the International Monetary Fund, they lauded the federal government here for the approval of the $274 million package that was endorsed by the federal parliament here in this month of December. That amount, 274, is being said to have met, that budget rather is being said to have met the International Monetary Fund standards. And this is the first time that we're receiving this news here in Somalia, for the first time since the collapse of the central government in 1991. And this was achieved following tough policies here, tough measures enforced by local authorities, as well as a visit by IMF officials here to visit the Ministry of Finance, as well as a different session that took place in Nairobi that involved all the financial experts here in the country. That they came together and they saw the need to improve fiscal reforms here in the country. And one thing that the government is trying to lure its donors, especially IMF and World Bank, is that it's showing for the first time in decades that it's making more out of its own domestic revenue than it's receiving in grants. And it's looking at improving that figure to about 20 to 25 million in the coming months. So definitely this will be the government's area of focus, if at all it hopes to get more support from World Bank and IMF, Rama.
Indeed, let's focus on that a little more. The federal government, as I understand it, has been working on trying to raise a lot more revenue from domestic sources, sales taxes and customs being two key focus areas. What progress has been made in improving those revenue sources, and what sort of challenges is the government running into?
Well, the government here is trying to create awareness. Indeed, it's trying to tell the business community, and it's also trying to tell the public that the only way that a government can be held accountable, and the only way that a government can be able to offer critical services to its public, is if the business community as well as the public contribute and pay their equal share. This is taxes here in Somalia. And definitely, Rama, looking at Somalia is a different case altogether. It's a country that is recovering from more than 2 decades of instability. So taxation, apart from Somaliland and Puntland, that is towards the north, it's quite a new term in other urban centers in south and central Somalia. So it's definitely one key area of focus that the government is trying to put. And one thing that you've said that is going to be a big challenge for the government is the issue of taxation, and it will mostly focus on the telecommunication sector. This is one industry that has remained untaxed, Rama, for more than 2 decades. It's making millions of dollars, and the government here has enacted a policy. The government recently also passed the telecommunication bill. This will give the government more say and more power to regulate the telecommunication sector, and this in turn is expected to boost the government's revenue from what it's going to collect from the telecom companies. So the biggest challenge, however, Rama, will be how the government will be able to enforce these measures. These telephone companies will argue that the government needs to offer them adequate security because they have their network antennas in areas controlled by Al-Shabaab. So the government will have to ensure security first before it can embark on taxation. So it will prove a difficult challenge for the Ministry of Finance, Rama.
Indeed, interesting times ahead for Somalia. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for that. That's Abdulaziz Billo, of course, live from the seaside capital of Mogadishu.